Day 2 is upon us. Iman Repeti joining us live from the Bridget Mabandla Justice College in Pretoria, where that commission will be sitting. It's a good morning to you again, Iman. Yesterday, a repeat ultimately of July 6 in many ways, but still just as important.
Compelling testimony, and I think it was one of those where, if you like watching TV, it was something that was so riveting. You just didn't want to take your eyes off it at all. But I want to pick up on some of the points that Dzoleka highlighted in that particular package yesterday, talking about the powers of the Police Minister Senzo Mchunu. Does he have operational oversight powers? Does he have the power to issue directives? Did he have the power to issue that letter to dismantle the PKTT, as we're calling it? Eldred, it is wonderful to be with you this morning. You watch the space closely, and I wanted to pick up on that theme first before we talk about oversight. All of this is a question of who was not watching what was going on. When this letter was issued and when Mkhwanazi tried to raise the alarm, it didn't seem as if those who he could hold accountable or get answers from were available to talk to him. How significant was all of that?
Quite significant, because it brought us to this moment. We couldn't have written a better script, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of plot twist. The problem with what we see is that somebody's been asleep at the wheel. We've got
a few people.
A few people. We've got Parliament, we've got the Minister, and there's a suggestion that the Minister's decision was motivated by all kinds of dubious and maybe concerning interest. And we have to watch that and see whether there's evidence to corroborate that. We also have the National Commissioner, who may, on the face of it, have to act and explain why there wasn't better support and uptake of the concerns expressed by the General. We have the Portfolio Committee, and we have the Interministerial Committee. So there's a number of entities that seem to have missed the moment, and which then led the Commissioner and the General Mkhwanazi to say, hold on, I've got to now go and take the public into confidence and express my concerns publicly, so that I get support from the ordinary citizen of South Africa who's concerned. And I'm doing this on behalf of others within the institution who have a shared concern and have a shared desire to have these issues resolved.
So if we think 6th October till now, he's doubled down. He's gone in much harder on what the country and the nation heard on that Sunday morning, or Sunday mid-morning. The question is, as you say, there are so many oversight bodies. The other meaning of oversight is in the verb. It is to actually miss something.
Absolutely.
So many people who should have been, awake at the wheel, as you've already shared with us, were not. But one of the biggest questions is, where was the president in all of this? This was his initiative, essentially, one would say, the PKTT, the Political Killings Task Team. He put the money behind it. They were already starting to yield results. And Mkhwanazi spoke about that yesterday. There were active cases. There are families, some of whom, whose cases are already inside court. The minister comes in, I think it was about six months, Eldred. Why does he home in directly on this? Of course, some of the answers might be plain for us to see, but to give this commission the opportunity to do its work, they're going to have to establish the veracity of all of that. But it is curious.
Absolutely, especially since General Mkhwanazi was at pains to say that this is not the only task team. Yet it is the one that he says was the successes can be tallied, the successes is marked. And there are ongoing investigations that intervention by the minister halted. And now we're questioning the change of evidence around the dockets, the handling of the case dockets. And if anything there nefarious happened, and there's a challenge to the credibility of that chain of evidence and the integrity of the handling of those dockets, it actually pushes back the investigations, and it potentially compromises the hard work of these detectives and this multidisciplinary team. So even just that intervention and halting that process is cause for concern.
Senzo Mchunu's name obviously came up a lot on day one. And before I get your sense overall about how well Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi set the scene for what we're going to see in the next couple of days. When he spoke about Senzo Mchunu and he spoke about investigations and what the kids would say, you know, can you produce the receipts? He certainly seemed to indicate, I've got these receipts. And my people who've been investigating these particular allegations will be coming to give testimony in camera for their own protection. In how much danger is Senzo Mchunu today? And could there be the potential, if there was already interference as alleged, for there to be continued interference?
Well, hopefully this will put a stop to the continued interference because there's a lot of eyes on it. And the General has already alluded to the critical role that the fourth estate played, the media. And the media now is to keep the attention going, but he's also asking us as the general public to say, please lobby behind this, not on my behalf, but behalf of all of us who are concerned with the issues affecting, and the rot, as it said, that's affecting not only the police, but the criminal justice system as a whole. So the minister, unfortunately, has a lot to answer for. We know that he's watching, I'm sure, carefully, and he's getting his own legal team in place, as is right. So when he comes, he's going to have to, in a very sober manner, because that's how the judge put it, that this is not an inquisition, it's an inquiry. And we're going to be inquisitive as to what we are going to gain, and we're going to try to listen impartially and non-partisan to what's been said. However, we are going to ask you to produce those receipts. The other thing that the General was at pains to say, or at least made reference to, is the fact that he's not looking at specific incidences. He's looking at patterns of decision-making, patterns of actions, patterns of occurrences, and these are not coincidental. They point to a general malaise and maybe an institutional concern, but also a cultural concern within the SAPS and the criminal justice system.
Expecting a lot more in terms of how he plans to present his evidence to the commission. A lot of housekeeping yesterday. Mkhwanazi's CV was delved into the organogram of how the police complex also works and who has the lines of authority and control. But also what is happening is what's external. Just a few roads away from us, the North Gauteng High Court expected to hear that application from the MK party to have these proceedings stop. We're already a day in, so I'm not sure how the court's going to view that and how this case will begin to flow. But Eldred de Klerk is with me looking at these matters, both externally from what we're hearing here at the Justice College, but also what's happening not too far from where we are, and then generally. Eldred, again, wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you.
We were having a discussion about how curious it is, this MK party court action. Let us not forget Jacob Zuma is the president of the party, former president of the country. He himself, a man with deep intelligence links and understanding, institutional memory of how all of this works and how all of this is developed. What is the lens through which you view this court action? Well,
I think it's the interesting part for me, Iman, is that I think it flies in the face of current public sentiment. And it seems to be they haven't read the brief of the Nhlanhla Commission, which is to look to correct, prevent, and then also inspire confidence in the judiciary and the criminal justice system and the police in particular. So if public sentiment is in support of this inquiry, is in support of correcting and preventing the continued rot and systemic failures of these vital institutions, we have a political entity in terms of the MK party wanting to be politically relevant. Yet the sentiment of the very constituents seems to say, hold on, we actually want this inquiry. And this inquiry can coexist alongside you as a political party doing your job in Parliament to continue to have oversight, to continue to take forward whatever recommendations come from you, and use parliamentary processes to correct, prevent, and inspire public confidence. So there's a dissonance between what the MK party says they're doing on behalf of the citizens of South Africa and the sentiment of the country.
Maybe one more question to follow that up. If you think about Senzo Mchunu, his political fate now, having to step outside of his position, Kachalia in place, this is also something that the MK party wants the court to reevaluate and to look at. Given again yesterday, Mkhwanazi sort of laying the cloak of accountability on Senzo Mchunu's shoulders in terms of the networks of complicity and enablement that he created inside these crime syndicates and networks. This is the allegation that Mkhwanazi is making. It makes it even more curious, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it leaves us wondering, is there a concern that this inquiry may go, if it really goes to the extent of its scope, what can it find? How far back are people concerned about, or are these networks relevant, and will they likely to implicate more people? So those networks of influence and those networks of interest and those criminal syndicates, where exactly, how deep does this go? And who might be implicated in this? And we're not saying that it's only centered around KZN, because we know that this is national. And it may even be international, because the eyes on what's happening in South Africa is not limited to South Africa, to SADC or the region. It's actually a global thing, because we need to have confidence in this bastion of democracy in Africa. And failure of that is a concern for all of us.
You know, we used all of these encompassing adjectives yesterday: explosive, catalytic, it's certainly a word that I use, but I also think seismic. When you think of, you know, a seismic event happening in the ocean somewhere, affecting countries and tsunamis, you know, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, as you say, this could be that moment where the impact is going to be probably huger. And I want to go back to the roots, because we've been in this, well, not a similar position, but the echoes of Nhlanhla now that stretch back to 1991. We think of the Goldstone Commission, which had to look into, or the events that led up to the elections, the political killings, the violence, Boipatong massacre, the Bishu massacre, so many different things. And it was in that particular commission where it also talked about a third force, where it also talked about you know, potential complicity and secret operations that were happening. Fast forward 25 years, you have the Morani Commission in 2016. It's a theme I'll pick up with Ziyanda in just a moment, because she covered it. Political power and positions, particularly inside the ANC. What was it all linked to, according to the Morani Commission? Linked to access to state tenders and contracts. Also that police and intelligence services were being manipulated by political actors. There was incompetence. There was interference. I mean, I can go on and on. Cater deployment. We know a lot of what is wrong. We're just getting more names and more descriptors in what Mkhwanazi is alleging, which still has to be proven, we have to say. But these themes are there, we can't ignore.
Absolutely. And the thing about commissions are, in terms of international law, a country and a state and its parliament and its head of government has a responsibility to ensure that these things don't happen in the future. So there's an element of learning from, an element of correction. It's concerning that we have to repeat the cycle. It's concerning that we're failing ourselves. We're not taking ourselves seriously, because the recommendations are there, the plans are there. We have the best legislation in the world, according to us, and to the other global actors and commentators. So why don't we take ourselves seriously and say, let's do something about this?
Yeah.